Welcome and thank you for joining Webinar Wednesdays Network Spotlight of West Virginia, the Family Support Center Association, brought to you by the National Family Support Network. I am Brenda McChesney, the co-founder and associate director of the National Family Support Network, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. If you're joining us online, you may listen directly through your computer speakers. If you have joined via the phone number that Zoom provided, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. For those of you joining online, please note the link to the Dropbox folder in the chat. Here you will see that there are some handouts available for download. In addition, you can put questions into the question section at any time. The chat section is open for you to include any comments during the webinar, but we ask that you direct all of your questions to the Q&A section of the Zoom, which we'll address at the end of the webinar today. And if you're in need of live tech support in the room and you have any tech issues, go ahead and pop them in the chat and our live support will be there to help you. Today's PowerPoint, the handouts, and a recording of this webinar will be available on the NFSN website on the Webinar Wednesday page at this time tomorrow. When you exit the webinar, an evaluation will automatically appear on your screen. We ask you to take a second to fill it out, please, because it provides us with valuable feedback for future webinars. Before we dive into our network spotlight on West Virginia, I'm going to take a second to share a little bit about the National Family Support Network. Over the last decade, we've quadrupled in size to now having 40 members serving over 3,000 family resource centers that serve more than 2 million people annually. The newest members are Nebraska, who joined in April, and Wyoming, who joined in September. The mission of the NFSN is to promote positive outcomes for all children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. Our vision, simply put, is to turn the whole map green so that all families will have access to quality family support services in their communities provided by family resource centers supported by strong, thriving networks. A little bit about today's presentation. We'll touch a bit on the National Family Support Network and Family Resource Centers. Then we'll go into West Virginia's Family Support Center Association and the long history they've had in serving families in their state. We'll cover unique opportunities and free resources for you at the very end and conclude with a brief evaluation. So first, let's dive into Family Resource Centers. Thousands of family resource centers have emerged organically across the country, yet their existence is still largely under the radar, as we like to say, America's best kept secret. A family resource center is a community or school-based welcoming hub of supports, services, and opportunities designed to support families to be strong and successful. They may be community-based, like the image on the left out of Vermont Family Resource Center, or they might be school-based, like the image you see on the right from Kentucky. Family Resource Center networks, which is just one level up, are how family resource centers are connected. Not only have cities, counties, and states hit upon the value of FRCs, but they also hit upon the value of networking them together. A network generally consists of 2 or more family resource centers, ensures coordinated quality support for all families, and serves as the backbone entity to leverage and coordinate the collective impact of their members. Next, we'll see the most common functions of family resource center networks. This data was collected by a national study done in Colorado by the Omni Institute in 2016, where they found that the functions include increasing connectedness, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration amongst their members. Additionally, providing training, technical assistance, coaching, and support. Also work around advocacy, policy, and legislation to help move the needle in that particular region or state. And then providing and maintaining a shared data tracking system so that we can have data in on whom we've served and really assess the outputs and the outcomes of our efforts. There are 4 different types of networks that family resource centers are made of. The first is a volunteer coordinated network. This is led by FRC directors themselves in voluntary leadership positions without paid network staff. Examples of volunteer coordinated networks include New Hampshire and West Virginia. The second is a funder coordinated network. This is led by a public department or foundation that both funds and convenes the centers. Examples here include New York and Nevada. The third are nonprofit coordinated networks. This is a nonprofit entity that coordinates the network, providing the backbone support with dedicated staffing. The nonprofit entity itself is not the network, The nonprofit may incubate the network to spin it off in the future, or it may continue to coordinate it. And examples of work in this are Alaska, North Carolina, and Washington. And last but not least is the independent network. So this would be a staffed independent nonprofit organization that functions as a membership alliance with members paying dues. These networks may raise and distribute funds, being an intermediary or not. Examples include Colorado and Maryland. So let's talk about the stages of development. I like to think about the stages of development like the stages of childhood, and from a baby to a toddler and a teen and an adult. Where in the stages of development for networks, we start with emerging. This is that 0 to 3 year space when you're just getting started. You're determining who will be at the table and what you want to focus on for your network and how you want to impact families within your community. Next is when a network goes into the evolving phase. And this is as you further develop. You may hire a contractor or your first staff, and the network begins to have a more structure, more capacity to do so. And then generally speaking, the third stage might be in that 5+ year activity. And this is when you typically have staffing and a track record of activities. An interesting characteristic of these networks is that they typically have weathered crises and decided to stick together. So now that we've gone through a bit of the family resource centers and family resource center networks and what makes up of it, we have our presenters for today's West Virginia Spotlight, where they will talk about the story throughout West Virginia from inception to where they're at now, innovations, post-COVID, and the unique attributes of their community and how they've responded. Our three presenters today are, first is Kent Nowowski, and Kent is the Deputy Commissioner for the Bureau for Family Assistance with the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Services. We also have Audrey Morris, who's the director for Morgan County's Family Success Center, and Tracy Kinney, director of Marshall County Family Success Center. So first up on our presentation to give an overview of the entire state is Kent. Once again, Kent Nowowski, the Deputy Commissioner for the Bureau for Family Assistance for the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Brenda. It's an honor to be here today and to talk a little bit about what we're doing here in West Virginia and our evolution over the years. And I'm excited to have the directors of two really great centers join us to talk a little bit about their history and the programming that they offer. So if we could maybe advance the slides. All right, so West Virginia is a state that is in need of family support centers, of places where families can go to find resources to stabilize them. Why that is, there are many factors that impact West Virginia. The bottom line is we have problems. We often fall at the bottom or the top, depending on your perspective, of a number of national measures that aren't good. Generational poverty has plagued West Virginia for almost its entire history. We have the third highest poverty rate nationally as of 2022, according to Census Bureau data. West Virginia is where food stamps started. McDowell County was the first place in the country to pilot food stamps. So it's a generational cyclical problem in West Virginia that we need to find ways to address and help break those cycles. We are undergoing for several years now an enormous child welfare crisis that is exemplified by the fact that we lead the nation in the number or per capita removals of children from parental custody. It's a huge problem. It has been an enormous focus throughout the state at all levels, government, the private sector, nonprofits, have been enormously focused on this issue, and we have to find innovative ways to get ahead of this and to break the or to find ways to interrupt the causes that destabilize families, put them into crisis, and lead to CPS coming in and removing children from the home. What has exacerbated that and a number of our other issues has been the opioid crisis. West Virginia has been absolutely devastated. We've been the focus, of a number of nationally screened documentary films about how hard the opioid crisis has hit West Virginia. And it's evidenced by the fact that we lead the nation in opioid-related overdose deaths per the CDC. So these are all things that destabilize families, put families into crisis, and reasons that we need places where they can go and find services and supports to address the challenges that they face. So what solutions do family support centers offer, or family resource centers, or as we call them here, family support centers? And I'll talk a little more about that evolution here in a moment. But what solutions do they offer to help address these issues? Well, when it comes to combating poverty, these are hubs in the community that can offer supports to families who are struggling financially or need other concrete supports, whether that be clothing, hygiene items, different things that can help them to address specific needs that they have. Once the families are in there receiving services and supports, then the staff at the family support centers can work with them to identify other needs and help really drill down to the root issues of what's troubling that family. When it comes to the child welfare crisis, again, early intervention is the key to CPS prevention. If we can get these families in there, find ways to help meet their needs, get them services, get them programming supports that they need, we can find ways to help these families stay together so that CPS does not need to go in and remove the children from the home. Likewise, families who are in a center receiving services, if they're troubled with opioid related issues, they can get referral to appropriate services. They can, those opioid related challenges can take many forms, including the financial struggles that we talked about. So, centers can find ways to help address those. Overall, they really help communities to become more resilient. Again, the key word that we heard when Brenda was introducing the concept is, community hubs, welcoming community hubs. And that's how we envision family support centers or family resource centers here in West Virginia, centers of the community. Addressing families' needs before they escalate to the point where you have law enforcement involvement or CPS involvement or something like that, or there are overdose deaths, things of that nature. There's an enormous return on investment. It's far more cost effective to get ahead of these problems by working with families early before they are in absolute crisis than it is once they've encountered other aspects of the system. And really, these are ways to empower families. Again, families that are visiting these centers feel more connected, not only to the staff there at the centers, but also to other families, to other resources in the community. And can find ways to improve their situations and to feel better about themselves. So that's really a key as well. So family resource centers in West Virginia began back in the 90s, really. And it was kind of an organic growth initially, with community leaders really recognizing the importance of supporting families and having places in the community. It was formalized later in the 90s with the establishment of the Starting Points Family Support Centers, and really, like a codified, recognized need for those centralized types of services. And then around the turn of the century, there was legislative action to create or provide funding for family resource centers and family resource networks throughout West Virginia. This was really the state legislature and the executive branch together recognizing the vital role that these types of centers can play in the well-being of communities. So I work for the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources in our Bureau for Family Assistance, although we are undergoing a reorganization, and come January, we're going to be the Department of Human Services. But that's right now, we're the DHHR. We have been the major government funder of family support centers, or family resource centers, as we used to call them, since the early days of Starting Points. And so the funding that we initially used for these centers was in small amounts, and we used CBCAP, Community-Based Child Abuse Prevention funding from the federal government. And we had one staff member who was really dedicated to managing those grants and providing technical support to the centers, helping them to get stood up, provide their services. So I mentioned the reorg that we're undergoing, but we went through one internally where we split the Bureau for Children and Families into two separate bureaus: the Bureau for Family Assistance, of which I'm a part, and the Bureau for Social Services, which manages CPS, Adult Protective Services, those sorts of things. With that reorganization, the Bureau for Family Assistance really saw the need to support this model, to provide more supports for family resource centers, family support centers. That's largely due to the vision of our commissioner, Janie Cole, who has worked in these settings and recognizes their value and has been a huge advocate for family support centers. But throughout the Bureau, we recognize these as key to everything that we're trying to do to provide economic, concrete supports to families, to help stabilize them, to build resilient and vital communities. So with the support of our departmental leadership, our Bureau Commissioner, we recognized the need and found ways to provide funding for at least one family support center in each of West Virginia's 55 counties. That's our vision. We are almost there. And it happened very quickly. We'll talk a little more about that in just a second, but that's our vision, to have at least one center in each of our 55 counties. Currently, we are creating a new division of family support within the Bureau. It's going to be a large division, actually, but there will be 3 staff members who are dedicated solely to family support centers, to overseeing the grants, as well as providing technical support, working with centers directly to help meet their needs and the needs of their communities. So that's going to be, I think, a big benefit for the centers, as well as for us to be more connected with them, especially as we've seen this enormous growth in the number of centers throughout the state, which I think is on our next slide. Yeah. So in 2022, like I mentioned, we allocated some additional monies from different funding streams, mostly federal, to expand the number of family support centers across the state. Or prior to that point, we had called them family resource centers, but we shifted with this expansion to calling them family support centers, but it's in essence the same thing. So, previously I had mentioned that we use CBCAP funding nearly exclusively to fund these centers, and that's not a large funding stream. But within our bureau and our department, there are other funding streams that are federally allowable for these purposes. Now, we had to work with our federal partners, particularly at the Administration for Children and Families, to ensure that we were doing things correctly, but we were able to navigate that with their assistance. And so now the bulk of the funding that we are directing to these centers comes from the TANF program, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And we envisioned this and set this out in our TANF state plan as addressing the first two of the four stated purposes of TANF primarily, and largely purpose one, which is to provide assistance to needy families so that children can remain in their own homes or the homes of relatives. Clear enough. Again, child welfare prevention, poverty mitigation, all of that ties into that first purpose of TANF. We continue to use CBCAP funding. We're able to draw in a little bit of Title IV-B funding that goes to our Bureau for Social Services, as well as a state funding stream that's the West Virginia Children's Trust Fund. It's a small amount of money, but we blend that in as well. And so we were able to increase the total amount of funding that goes to each center annually to $250,000. And I forget the exact figure it was before, but it was in the double digits, not the triple. So it was not 250, that's for sure. Prior to 2022, at the start of this expansion, we had 24 centers covering 22 counties, and that was a growth from earlier days as well. But you see that in 2022, when we increased this funding amount and really started a push to expand statewide, we saw an enormous jump with 40 centers across the state in that grant year, covering 37 of our 55 counties. And then for the current year, we continued that push, and we're now at 56 centers covering 53 counties, a total of $14 million in funding that we're pushing out to family support centers this year. And with that, you see my contact information. And I'll be talking more to you later in the presentation as well, but happy to engage with anybody who might have questions. So feel free to reach out. Turn it back to Brenda.
Thank you so much, Kent. We really appreciate you giving us an overview of the entire state of West Virginia and how it's evolved over the years. And next, I am excited to introduce, we have Audrey Morris. She's the director of Morgan County's Family Success Center, giving us a story of the last 25 years of support and innovations done within her community. So Audrey, we'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to say that we started the family resource centers, starting point centers in the 90s. And when a lot of people have moved over to the family support center, Morgan County model, we kind of stuck with the starting points name because in our community, that's who our families knew us. That's how our funders, our supporters, volunteers, and especially our families knew who we were. And we just didn't want to change our name and then lose recognition in the community. The original dollar amount, Kent, I think was about $45,000 to $55,000. The first grant that we were given in 1999. And Brenda, I apologize. I'm kind of ad-libbing and jumping around a little bit. So our mission is to provide pathways to independent living and healthy and stable living for families. And we use the Strengthening Families model as a base and have adopted ACEs, resilience, and other trauma-informed models to lead programming and services. In our community, this is, Kent and I both alluded to the fact that the family support centers, family resource centers were opened, or they started under the Gaston Caperton administration. And this is how we have come up through the 25 years. Next year in 2024 will be 25 years. And I noticed in the chat that someone mentioned about blended funding, and that's how we survive. We did survive. The boost in funding this year was amazing, and we are very thankful for that. But we still look to our local partners for funding and individuals, because people have a buy-in when they're donating their time, talent, or money to our centers. So the evidence-based program, beginning most services and educational opportunities, we're focused on early childhood and only with families birth to 5 years old. And our center, as with many other counties, started looking within our community to find additional funding, because there were other needs that were being brought to us, and we wanted to make sure that we could meet those needs. So we started looking for other funding. The Strengthening Families model, we use nurturing parenting curriculum and the adverse childhood experiences research outcomes. We realized in 2017 how much the evidence-based programs and ACEs science supported the same ideas and practices, and we began using them in tandem. That's most evident in our Parent Resource Navigator program, where life skills, ACEs education, and nurturing parenting classes are offered to support parents going through the CPS court system. The starting points brought the knowledge of ACEs to our community, and that was something that I'm kind of proud of, that we were at a statewide training, Partners in Prevention, and it was like this aha moment of ACEs, and we'd never heard of that before. And we brought that back to our community, and we've used it to educate our community partners, educate our funders, educate our families. And so we use that. We don't get stuck in ACEs, though. We want to move families to they're looking at resilience, and we want to look at PACEs, and that refers to the positive and adverse childhood experiences. So mixing all of that together to make sure that we can affect our lives, as well as the organization systems and communities within our community. And this is a really cool graph that we use. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Strengthening Families framework. But when we like this model, this is a state model that all centers across the state have to use. And one day, one of our team members took the majority of our programs that we offer and put it under one of the 5 protective factors, and several of them actually go under different ones. So when we start talking, our staff comes in and says, oh, I've got this great idea and I want to start a new program. My questions are, what protective factor does it go with? How much money do you need? Where are you going to get it? And who are going to be your partners? And so we start with this model of looking at the protective factors. Our community kitchen is one of the things that we highlight frequently. We provide hot meals 3 days a week to anyone in the community who need food. And 75 to 80% of the people who come are living on less than $20,000 a year. So in 2004, we met with our community partners and decided that that was something that we could take on and that they would provide support to us. In 2012, it was brought to our attention that there were hungry children in our community on weekends, that they were relying on food that they were getting at school. And when they went home on the weekends, they didn't always have food. So we partnered with our Board of Education and pulled together a committee of people who were interested. And at one point, we had about 150 volunteers stretched out across the month. They are, during the height of COVID, they were bagging over 350 bags of food every week to be sent home with kids. Currently, we're bagging 250 bags. The opioid crisis also brought attention to the number of grandparents and relative caregivers in our community and across the state. And so we worked with state and local partners to implement the Healthy Grandfamilies program. And that is a statewide program that provides an 8-week educational course, follow-up case management, and a monthly support group. In Morgan County, we have a small community on our western border called Paw Paw, and it's named after the fruit, Paw Paw. And, 40 years ago, it was a thriving community. They had businesses there. There was some really interesting and fun things going there. And it's been economically depressed and really hard hit by drug use and crime that's associated with the drug use. So we began partnering with the local foundation to get some extra funds to focus specifically on that community. And we partner with the town of Paw Paw to use facilities, with the local churches who provide help with our summer programs and group activities for families. And one of those group activities is called Magic Monday and Fun Friday. And it's a camp. We go over twice a week. We take a couple staff people, some AmeriCorps members, and provide free meals. Everybody gets free lunch, STEM activities, free books, physical activities, and water games or whatever we can do to engage the family and to model good parenting with the children. We also partner with the school and Paw Paw for literacy projects and a basic needs pantry. And we have actually put money into pantries in all of our local schools through a separate funding stream, so that kids who need deodorant, who need undergarments or shoes, can go to the school counselors or the school social workers and get what they need at the school. We started a new project in 2021, and it's called Empower You, and it's for middle school girls. And this project focuses on health, education, safety, well-being, and economic development of girls. And each session is kind of unique. We bring a local female from our community who comes in and talks about their life, their struggles, and their successes. So it's a great role model program. And we ran that for about 1.5 years, and the school started saying we need that program for guys. And so we partnered again with our partners in the community. I am overseeing just to make sure that we're meeting our grant guidelines. However, it's all men who run this program. They meet monthly, they coordinate what meal they're going to have, who's going to be the speaker, what's going to be the topic. And their focus for that is to foster positive masculinity by equipping them with skills, values, and attitudes necessary to thrive in today's world. So coming back to ACEs and trauma-informed care, along with that aha moment of what ACEs were, we started asking, what happened to you and what's wrong, or instead of what's wrong with you, which seems to be sometimes the way that service providers sometimes look at people when they come in and a family is continuing to make the same mistakes and not making any headway. And we learned to switch that to say, what happened to you? And how can we help you to remove barriers and to move forward with your family? So this slide has shows the trauma-informed programming supports. The evidence-based programs that we use are strengthening families, nurturing parenting, and we've started using the National Fatherhood Initiative information to have evidence-based frameworks, brings positivity and strength together with facts, offering clients a path forward. And this is a list of all the amazing things that we've done over the last 25 years. And it's pretty cool when we start looking at numbers to update this. We had put this together, this slide in for our 20th anniversary. And then when we started looking at it again, it's like, wow, look at all that we've done. You know, some days we sit back and say we're not doing enough and we're not meeting the need. But looking at this, you know, we feel like we're not meeting every need for every family, but we feel like we are definitely reaching them, and we're always looking for new ways to help them. So we have 2 pages. That's a list of community partners. And we have a strong, consistent community partners throughout the years. Many of the people on this list have been with us for 25 years. As the opioid crisis hit West Virginia, our community partners expanded because, you know, the peer counseling and the Day Report Center and different things that probably didn't even exist 25 years ago are things that we're now working with almost on a daily basis. One of the new programs that happened during COVID was the Parent Resource Navigator. We had loosely worked with our court system to provide court-involved parents. They were required to participate in parenting and life skills education. And, you know, sometimes they came to us, the parents, confused about what they were supposed to be doing, and we weren't exactly sure what the court system wanted. So we went to Cindy Hill, who's with the West Virginia Juvenile Justice Commission, and worked through some things with our local circuit court judge. And we in Morgan County became the first Parent Resource Navigator program in the state of West Virginia as a pilot program. And I'd say the first year and a half, there were lots of hurdles that we would be like, oh no, we didn't think about that. And oh no, we didn't plan about that. But our judge, our prosecuting attorney, and Cindy worked with us. We all worked very well together to overcome those obstacles and make it work. So through this initiative, a formal agreement was made with our circuit court system. They refer parents to our PRN program. And the PRN, Parent Resource Navigator, works directly with offending parents through their court improvement program. The IP can be 20, 25 things on a list that it's overwhelming for families. If they're still dealing with drug addiction, if they're illiterate, you know, if they have a low education level, they may not even understand what the IP is. And so our PRN works with them directly. They meet with her, and she goes through that list of the IP. She helps them with phone numbers, finds them resources. Sometimes it's housing, sometimes it's jobs. She is not doing the application. She is not making the calls for them, but she's providing them the resources so that they can reach out. And then she follows up with them. Hey, did you make that phone call? Don't forget you have a court hearing tomorrow. You know, did you hear from your CPS worker? So I'm excited to say that, you know, from a year and a half ago, 2021, when we started this program, that the West Virginia Juvenile Justice Commission is now providing support and guidance for 8 family support centers in West Virginia. And Cindy is amazing, and she only wants to work with this program with family support centers in West Virginia. So she's constantly looking for other family support centers in the state who can support this program. So again, since COVID, we kind of chuckle, but it's not really funny. We moved from a location that we called the Tree House. It was in an old school building, and it sat on the hill, and we had a beautiful view of the town. And it was always wonderful in, you know, the fall and when it snowed, or in the spring, because the change of the seasons, we kind of could see everything out our windows. But the county decided to sell that building, and so we moved to the senior center to be co-located with other nonprofit agencies. And with that, we are sharing their commercial kitchen so that we can continue to provide the community meals that we serve 3 evenings a week. one of the things, jumping back to the Parent Resource Navigator pilot, was that we had the ability to offer parenting and life skills classes in our facility because we were already trained in nurturing parenting and life skills. So when the families needed those services, we didn't have to find someone else in the community to provide them. We could immediately make that referral. And so the benefits of being part of the West Virginia State Network, there's been times when it's been pretty rough for family support centers over the years. And we had to, we didn't lobby, you're not allowed to lobby, but we educated our state officials to continue funding and what the value of our programs are. And so that is one of the benefits. Also, we share a lot of information among each other. We just came back from a state conference, and we talked about different programs that we were doing in our communities, and it's like, how did you do that, and how can we work to find those resources? So that is a great thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for going over Morgan County's innovations. I just love that graph, the breakdown of the Strengthening Families Protective Factors and everything that you're doing within your community to bring the protective factors to life and to make sure that the family members are supported and nurtured in all the right ways. So up next, we have Tracy Kenny that I'd like to introduce. She is the director of Marshall County Family Success Center and is here to talk to us about their evolution with regard to family support in Marshall County. So thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm excited to be here today and share some things about the Marshall County Family Support Center that make us unique. Every support center offers some similar services, but we're also unique in that we meet the individual needs of our counties. So I'd like to share the role of the Marshall County Family Support Center with you. We provide referrals to programs, to services, and community support. We also provide, as many of the other family support centers, a food, clothing, baby, hygiene, cleaning pantries on site. And so this is available for families to come in as needed. Every family support center completes an intake process with the families, and we determine their needs. And then we're able to provide these resources to them as needed. We also promote health information and educational resources. That can be everything from safety recalls to information on the Children's Health Insurance Program. We connect families with the West Virginia Navigators. So we really try to get information out to the community, whether that be safe sleep, breastfeeding awareness, all of those kinds of things for the families in our community. We also provide supportive parenting education, parenting classes, and parent support groups. Here in Marshall County, we recently started the Circle of Parents group, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But it's a new group that we focus on in a very rural area of our county, and they're all moms and fathers and grandparents of pre-K students in that area. So a lot of times you'll see parent education classes, you'll see parenting programs. We try to focus on support for families. It might be stress less and be your very best to try to give parents the resources and support that they need. We also are excited that we provide child development activities, play groups, story hours for families. And this can be everything from having a family night that they come in and they play board games. It can be participating in a story hour play group where we incorporate children's activities at a local park. We try to get children out and being active in the community, taking advantage of all the beautiful resources that we have in our county at the local parks and things of that nature. The next group is the Teen Support Group and Educational Opportunities. Here in Marshall County, we're very lucky to have a very supportive school-based system. We work very closely with the Marshall County schools, and we have an alternative school here, Gateway Achievement Center. And we have worked with those students. We've conducted focus groups with them to determine what their needs are. And they've reported things like employment is a barrier, things of safety, transportation. So we're working with them. And next week, we get to go back in and do some stress relievers for those students who are already having challenges. Just a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to take our mobile boutique. The counselor, the school nurse, and the principal had reached out and said that many of the students, unfortunately, didn't have proper clothing, especially as it was going into winter. So we took our mobile boutique that you'll see a little later in my slides over to them and was able to provide some basic winter clothing that the students got to pick themselves, some shoes, and also some hygiene products. As we move to the next slide, you'll see that we have some additional programming. And this is similar in all of the family support centers across the state. We did see a change in the typical family that we work with. So as Audrey had mentioned, we work a lot with grand family programs and kinship relative programs. Here specifically in Marshall County, and it's very common, unfortunately, in the state of West Virginia, we do see a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren, and in some circumstances, their adult children as well. So it's not uncommon for us to get a call here at our center saying that the grandmother received the children last night at 7 o'clock. She's in need of diapers, clothing, she's in need of car seats, any of those kinds of things. So we do see an overwhelming need for grand family programs and kinship relative programs as well. We are also looking, we want everybody to be engaged and everybody to be involved. And in an honest way, a lot of times the individuals that we see participating in activities are moms and their children. So we're going above and beyond to try to encourage fatherhood and paternal engagement opportunities. And one of the exciting things that we had last week with our Circle of Parents group was we had 6 young ladies attend, and we had a gentleman who was the grandfather. And after the event, he participated like everyone else. We had a child activity that they participated in as well. And afterwards, he pulled me aside and he said, "I just want you to know why I was here today." And of course, I let him know that he was always welcome. And he said, "Well, there's no father figure in the picture right now. And I think, you know, I'm the grandfather, but I think the children need that." And so I welcomed him with open arms. But we see not only fatherhood opportunities being critical and important, but also going back to the grand families and including the fathers and the grandfathers. Some of the other things that we do at the family support centers is we help individuals who might be preparing for employment services, resume writing, interviewing techniques. And I've worked with several individuals as well as our other staff here on resume writing. They can come in and they can use a computer at our site, and we will assist them. Maybe we give them resume writing techniques, or maybe we even practice some interview questions with them. We can help print their resumes and give them some suggestions based on their likes and dislikes on what might be available and encourage them to go out and seek employment. One of the other things as we look down this slide is financial literacy for families, whether that be through budgeting and saving. And sometimes we all have to get creative. I think it's very hard to encourage families to save when they're struggling to meet their needs and pay their utilities and put food on their table and purchase groceries. So that can be creative in what that looks like. We had some interest on extreme couponing. We've had individuals say it's so costly when you go to the grocery store. So we have an individual who would like to come in and offer that class and kind of help them learn how to maybe stretch their dollar a little further by doing some couponing. So we're excited for that to be an opportunity that we have up and coming. And one of the things, as Audrey had mentioned, one of the components that we have is nutrition and cooking classes for the children and adults. We are getting ready to offer some classes for the children and the adults. And then at the end of the class, the participants will receive items that they can take home for their kitchen. And it'll be some basic cooking utensils, but they'll have that for their own individual kitchens. And we do see often in here that some of the children after school need to prepare, whether it be a snack for themselves and their siblings, or maybe even start dinner because mom or dad might not be getting home until late. So we want to make sure that they have the skills and the abilities to help alleviate some of that burden for the families and provide a healthy, nutritious snack for themselves and sometimes their siblings. One of the next items that most of the family support centers will be working on is linkages to transportation, childcare, and respite services. And I will be very honest with you, in Marshall County, we struggle with all three. We do not have public transportation in our county, except for on a very limited basis, and that's a trial run at this point in time. So it is very difficult for individuals. We have a very rural area in our county, sometimes to even get to medical appointments. So we do work with some of the local churches. There's some faith and action programs that will provide some transportation. So sometimes we have to get creative in working with the family to get them connected to some type of transportation. Childcare is equally difficult. In Marshall County alone, we only have one family childcare provider that's registered with the state of West Virginia through the Resource and Referral Agency. And she is in a very rural area. So again, we have families who are in need of childcare. In our county, like many others, most people will tell you that the waiting list to get into a childcare center for an infant can be up to a year. And they almost say, if you find out you're pregnant, you need to get on a waiting list. And that poses many barriers, unfortunately, for families that are working, that need childcare to continue to work. So we are looking at ways that we might be able to work with the Resource and Referral Agency to recruit some childcare providers in our county. And then respite service is somewhat the same. There are very limited services in our county, and trying to connect other families and other support services for them. And then finally, one of the things that I love probably the most is communities are caring and responsive service opportunities. And that's unique in these grants. But what that means to us here in Marshall County is that we're giving individuals, specifically it can be students, it can be teens, it can be high school students, can be families, an opportunity to get involved, to care about their community, and things like Earth Day. So we had an opportunity for families last year to come out and plant trees at the local park. Some of the other things we do is a community cleanup. And most exciting, the one that I love the most, is that many of our schools have adopted a community garden in which the students plant the items, they see that process through, and then they literally get the fruits of their labor. So a lot of times we'll see the communities in caring are opportunities that we can connect families to their communities. And then on the next slide, we will see we do face challenges, as Audrey had mentioned and Kent had mentioned. Post-pandemic COVID challenges in our service delivery area is much like many of the other family support centers across the state of West Virginia. In our county specifically, we have many services and supports that are no longer available to families. Unfortunately, in our county, we have nonprofits that have closed or relocated completely out of our county. We had many agencies that were serving, multiple counties, and so they're no longer located here. And again, as we had mentioned, the difficulties with transportation can make it very difficult to travel outside of the county to receive those services. The next challenge that we have seen post-pandemic is that funding and donations for programs have decreased drastically in our service area and communities. We work with many local churches and other organizations, and they all say that funding is decreased drastically, and that they have a lack of program volunteers, that it's just never come back from COVID, and whether people were fearful to be out in large groups. And we certainly understand that we've seen a decrease in the funding and donations for programs. What we've also seen, unfortunately, is an increased cost of goods and services. So we all know, and we all probably dread as we go out to the grocery store, the cost of groceries have continued to increase. We also see individuals saying the cost of gas to get to and from work or wherever else they need to go poses challenges, and then utilities and their rent. So we've seen an increase in all of these things, and many of the families report to us that they haven't seen an increase in their wages. So they're really struggling to make the decision, do I pay my electric bill this month? How do I put food on my table? So again, when you go back and look at the pantries that we're providing, we can provide some food assistance. We can provide some utility assistance. So every little bit helps for these families, especially as we've seen an increase. And I think it's really been nationwide for food insecurities for our families. So as we see the food insecurities and the challenges that families are facing, we're trying to meet that need in some very creative ways. And then finally, some of our post-pandemic challenges is that our number of referrals, we've been a family support center, we're in our second year. Our number of referrals continue to increase and nearly double every single month. So the volume of families that we're serving obviously continues to increase. So we've had to get a little creative and innovative about meeting the needs of the families. And one of the things that you're seeing on the slide now and is noted first is our mobile clothing and hygiene boutique. And you're seeing it from a side view. In the next slide, you're going to see the inside. But what we do, and I had mentioned, we took to the Gateway Achievement Center, is this mobile boutique allows us to take a small store out. Clothes are all new and they are lined by size. So it allows the students or allows the individuals to have a shopping experience. Of course, there's no cost to the items and they get to pick based on their desire. It's not something we're giving to them. So they get to pick their style, they get to pick the sizes, and it makes a wonderful opportunity for the families that we're able to serve. As I had mentioned, some cooking classes and getting individuals the ability to have some proper items in their kitchen. We had a lot of families when we started talking about this that they didn't feel that they even had the proper utensils at home, whether it be a couple pans for baking, spoons and spatulas. So we're working on not only teaching them how to prepare healthy, nutritious meals, but also giving them some of the tools to be able to do that. And one of the other things that we realized right away, based on some of the challenges that I just talked about, was that we needed to look and see what type of partnerships we could have. If organizations no longer existed, we needed to locate new organizations. And we've really relied heavily on our local churches, our city government, civic groups, and the public housing authorities and local businesses. And one of the things that I wanted to mention just very quickly is that we reached out to the Public Housing Authority to provide some resources to them after receiving numerous calls. And so when I reached out to the new executive director of the Housing Authority, she let me know in her 6 years of being there, we were the first ones that had reached out to them and wanted to come and help. And so what we did is we went door to door to family units and we provided them with all of our local resource guides and some basic hygiene items such as toothbrush, toothpaste, and some hair products, just to get them acquainted with who we were, what we do, and a resource guide so they could have some supports. Next, I had just briefly mentioned that we have a Circle of Parents support group in a rural area of our county. A lot of times we hear often that there's just nothing available in the rural areas. So we were contacted by the Limestone Pre-K program and we go out there on a monthly basis. We have our support group, which is fairly new, and we're excited about where that's going. So that's open for the parents. It's a monthly group providing the support right in their backyard, so to speak. And one of the other things that Ken, I think, had mentioned is that unfortunately we have a lot of children that have had a tremendous loss. Last year alone, in our first children's grief support program, we had 10 participants, and those were all children that had lost an immediate family member, whether it be a parent, a sibling, And so that program has evolved. We provide resources. There's a counselor that comes in and offers the program with us, and we provide a lot of support services. We provide children's journals, everything from fidgets, modeling clay to support the children and give them an outlet to be able to talk about their feelings and also know that they're not alone. And then as we look at this, and we've talked about the multi-generational programming focusing on grandfamilies and kinship relative caregivers. Last June, we offered what we called gardening with grandfamilies and gardening with grandparents. And we did this on a Sunday afternoon. We invited grandfamilies, grandparents, and parents were also invited as well. And we did it on a Sunday, and everyone said they won't come on a Sunday. And we had over 125 families. We had 17 agencies available, not only to give out resources and promote their programs, so grandfamilies and parents would know what resources are available, but we all did a children's activity as well, which also included a pop-up fruit and vegetable stand by the local extension office. So it was very well received, and we plan on continuing to do that every single year. One of the other things that we're looking at, and they had mentioned as well, substance abuse prevention efforts in our community are critical. So my coworker and I have been trained on Narcan distribution, and we've gone out in the community at several events to help provide the Narcan training and the distribution. And we've also participated in things like Prescription Take Back Day to give families a safe alternative to a safe alternative way to dispose of medications that they no longer need. And so we try to do some community awareness, as we do see in our community, and I know statewide and even nationwide, many families struggling with substance abuse. As we look at the next slide, we'll also see other innovations and collaborations that we have. I do want to note, now you're seeing the inside of the mobile boutique that I had just referred to. So that's a way you can go in and they can participate. And I just wanted you to see kind of the inside of the boutique there. We do also look at offering parent, caregiver, child activities on the evenings and weekends. We all know that sometimes it's easy to provide opportunities during the regular work week, but that seems to be a barrier for most of the families that we're serving. So we really try to survey the families and meet them where their needs are. And so we provide a lot of weekends and evening activities. I wanted to briefly mention, we have a teen Christmas project here that we work. We're very fortunate to have collaboration with the Marshall County Schools. And this Teen Christmas Project has been in existence here for many years, in which we work with the school nurses, the school counselors, and sometimes the principals to identify students that may have a need. And this year alone, we've already identified 272 middle and high school students that will receive a bag from the Family Resource Network and Family Support Center, which will include things like basic hygiene items and then a small gift as well. And so that's something that we do to help assist families that these teens probably would not receive something otherwise. And also last year, in trying to provide services for families, we brought in a mobile medical unit through Cornerstone. And we brought that here to the Family Support Center location so we could help reduce the barriers that families might have, and the services were provided at no cost. So again, trying to think outside the box sometimes in what we can do to assist families and make things a little easier for them to receive services. The next item that we do here at our Family Support Center is we provide lice kits for schools, health department, and the Department of Health and Human Resources. And I know lice kits doesn't seem like much fun, but it's critical. And we want to do everything that we can to help keep students in school. So what we do at the beginning of the school year is we provide lice kits, which includes everything from the lice shampoo, laundry detergent, garbage bags, tips for prevention, tips for treatment. And we provide those to the schools, and as I said, the health department and the Department of Health and Human Resources. And then they contact us as they deplete the supplies, but they have them on hand that they can send home for families as needed. The other thing that we do here at our Family Support Center is we work very closely with our Department of Health and Human Resources and specifically the CPS unit, and we provide a community closet to them at their location. In that community closet, it's everything from hygiene items, really through birth, through adulthood. We provide diapers, wipes, all kinds of baby supplies. We provide some basic toys, books, hygiene items, clothing, shoes. So those items are all available. So if a CPS worker or any other Department of Health and Human Resources worker needs those, they have access to them right there in their own unit, and it's available. And then we check that and restock that once a month as needed. And the next item I wanted to mention, and just trying to be creative in what resources we could get out to the community, we have Family Support Center community trees. And it's a wooden tree, and it has probably about 35 clips on it. And that we take those out to the community. We've taken it out to our resource and referral agency. We've taken it to our soup kitchen. Just very recently, we've taken it to the Department of Health and Human Resources and our local city building. And sometimes it's focused, like right now, we have one out that focuses on winter accessories, some basic gloves, hats, socks, anything like that that somebody may need. We also try to highlight some special occasions. So if it's Literacy Awareness Month, we take it out, we put free books on it. It's all available to families at no cost. And then one of the other items I wanted to mention is blessing boxes and lending libraries in our community locations. We have 10 blessing boxes, which are full of non-perishable items that we encourage community members to share what they can and take what they need. And these are all things such as canned goods, non-perishable items, maybe mac and cheese, pasta sauce, pasta that they can make a meal with. And we refill these twice a month. Typically, they're all sponsored by another agency. But what we have found is that just a few days after being filled, they're already empty again. So we are working with a couple of churches that are working with us and making donations that we refill those boxes about twice a month. 2 of those are in very rural areas. At local elementary schools, and a couple other ones are within walking distance of community parks and things like that that families have access to. So we're trying to, again, just be creative in what we can offer and how we offer that to our communities.
Tracy, thank you so much for sharing about the innovations that you're doing. Before we move on from the slide, the really creative, beautiful, and honoring nature of your mobile clothing unit, to walk into that feels like something special and a gift that you get to bring to your community, especially it being so rural. And in the awareness of time, I was thinking, because we had one slide really talking about, for the family resource centers that are part of the network, the highlights of the benefits of being a part of West Virginia's network. Are there 2 here that you can briefly highlight?
Yes, absolutely. I would say for the Family Support Center Association and Network, we receive training and technical assistance by a grant specialist through the DHHR. And that has allowed us, if we have questions, we can reach out to them for assistance, we can get training. And one of the other things that I think is really critical for us is that there's a mentoring program for established directors to share with new staff at newly established sites and centers. So there's a mentoring program. If you're a new family support center, you can be connected with somebody else that's more established. So by all means, what a great, wonderful resource for us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tracy. And for those of you who would love to follow up with Tracy, just like our other presenters, here is her contact information, and will be listed on our Webinar Wednesday page. And in a moment, we'll go through some of the resources of how you can access creating a family resource center or helping to support a new network in your state. But before we do, we've asked Kent to come back on and just highlight, Kent, we have a lot of next steps. I know West Virginia has really big visions for where you want to go and what you need to get there. Are there a couple here that you'd love to highlight for our viewers today?
Sure. First, I'd just like to say how much I love hearing Tracy and Audrey and the other FSC directors talk about what they do. You feel the passion and how important it is, and I just love it. We want to continue our expansion. So we have at least one center in every county. One key thing, and I think this goes to one of the questions or comments in the chat too, is we really want to see and find ways to help centers, because most of them are doing this on their own, but we really want to find ways to support this, is for them to be able to diversify their funding, because we're able to give them what we're able to give them, but there are more resources out there for them to tap into, and they do a great job of that. We just really want to see that continue. One key thing that we want to see too is an increase in the number of centers that are delivering Title IV-E reimbursable prevention services. In other words, those services that are on the Family First Prevention Services Clearinghouse. It's an untapped federal funding stream for a lot of these centers that can really tie into what they're already doing and be an excellent source of federal funds. So we're trying to work to stand that up. That involves a lot of intra-DHHR collaboration between us and the Bureau for Family Assistance and our sister bureau at Social Services. I was going to tell you a little bit about FAST-LC, but I think we're running out of time. But yeah, so we're excited to try to move that forward as well.
A lot of innovation happening within West Virginia, and we really appreciate all three of you for sharing about your story and the evolution and the development. We have time for one or two questions because we had quite a few chatted in. So I invite Tracy and Audrey to go ahead and turn your cameras on, unmute yourselves, and I'll let you, we have about 30 seconds to answer these questions, so we need to keep it a little concise, but we have the follow-up contact information if you want more information from our presenters. But the first one that comes in is from Maurice Portley, and he asks, do the family support system have navigators to help parents before or after CPS involvement? Who would like to tackle that one in a quick roundup of an answer?
So I think that's essentially what Audrey was talking about with it's still kind of a pilot program with 8 centers right now having the parent resource navigators. I see Maurice also had a follow-up question about the success of that. Maybe Audrey can speak to that from the Morgan County perspective. But
families can be referred to us at any point in time. We take walk-ins for all of our services. They don't have to come down that line of the court system. That was just kind of to streamline things that were already happening. As far as the success, unfortunately, we have had probably 5 families who have graduated from the program, who have gained and maintained custody of their children. And on the flip side of that, we're looking at Circle of Parents, and we're looking at parent advisory councils and things, so that once those parents do gain custody of their children, that we can provide support to them afterward.
Thank you so much for explaining that, both Ken and Audrey. We appreciate it. The next question is, as you've first an appreciation. Thank you for all the work you do with families. They're curious. This is from Ryan Adams in Iowa. As you've grown in scale very quickly, have your family resource centers been parent-led or parent-advised? So we'll start there first, and then secondarily, how do you make use of the National Family Support Standards?
Having a parent advisory council or a PAC is mandatory within our grant requirement. Some of us are a little, and I'll say that we're not one of the ones who have a great PAC, but some are better at their PAC, and others don't have as much parent buy-in. But we are all working on that, and I think that's one of the trainings that we're going to have this year. We had that a couple weeks ago at our state conference, but that's something that's definitely going to be put on the front line of trainings for this year.
Fantastic. Yes, we'll be bringing the quality standards to West Virginia, and we also have the Parents Advisory Council training that will talk about both of the upcoming opportunities for any participant who would like to join. And the very last question, which is that we can cover today, what has been your messaging to state officials to demonstrate the value of your services? This comes in from Michael Williams. Who would like to tackle that?
This is Tracy. I think I can tackle that briefly. I think it's most important for us to share with state officials the number of families being served and that families receiving services are healthy and thriving. And I think that's most important. And sharing a success story from a family, to be able to share that with a legislator who can in turn share it with others about a success story is very impactful.
Most definitely. I think it's one thing to be able to report the numbers that you shared, right? That every month doubling the need of the requests, the referrals coming in, but to share the success stories of what it looks like when you innovate and create and have funding to support those programs. Fantastic. We really appreciate the four of you, or the three of you, excuse me, for your participation in the webinar. We're going to cover a few more resources now, but you're welcome to turn your cameras off. And just want to mention to our participants, we have a quick survey at the end that we'd love for you to participate in. It gives us feedback and creative suggestions for how we can help support you in the work that you're doing. So as we progress, want to highlight just a few things. The first is that on our website, under Family Support Programs, you'll see some of the key overview documents that we covered today. These are our core Family Resource Center resources, overviews of what a Family Resource Center is, core videos about Family Resource Centers, including video spotlights from our member Resource Center networks, where they walk you through their Family Resource Center, as well as the latest research that's been done on Family Resource Centers and funding. How are FRCs funded? How might you innovatively go about that? The next is if you're interested in really understanding and looking at our members, which are our state networks. So here you'll see an overview of Alabama. We have one of these snapshots for each and every one of our members, and it gives all the really key critical data about what they do and the impact they make in their communities. We also have our National Family Support Network Hub. This is a deep, deep dive into Family Resource Center work. So it's a compilation of templates from our members, documents to help support creating Family Resource Centers. So this is our Family Resource Center Learning Hub. And then if you are interested in, excuse me, I'll go back one more time, the network, we also have a network hub. So we have the Family Resource Center Learning Hub and the FRC Network Hub. So it really is everything that you need to navigate this space to build momentum and improve quality practice. And then, as I mentioned, Webinar Wednesdays are another one of our resources that we offer on a regular basis. You can find all of our recorded Webinar Wednesdays on our homepage here, and they're broken down by content categories. So whether you're interested in standards implementation or advancing the field or looking at networks, you'll be able to get a deep dive into everything you need into the world of Family Resource Centers and networks. Our next webinar is actually just around the corner, and it is a favorite. It's Uncovering America's Best Kept Secret, Family Resource Centers and Family Resource Center Networks. We invite you to come and share it out amongst your networks for anyone who might be interested. We also, another core service that we do is we really connect members across our networks. We present to key stakeholders across sections and sectors in our community. We provide technical assistance and training, coaching, and support for network development and Family Resource Center development. And we are most known for our standards of quality training certification, as well as our Parent Advisory Committee training. And we have some new stuff on the horizon for 2024, so you should be on the lookout for that. Speaking of our trainings, upcoming in December and January, the dates shown here are standard certification training. Here you can become standard certified and join over the 15,000 people across the United States who have participated in being certified. And you can always contact us if you'd like to bring the standards training to your specific agency or your state. And then if you're interested in really engaging in effective parent advisory engagement, you can participate in our Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training. This is a very dynamic, highly unique, highly rated training that was referenced just a moment ago by our presenters. We have a training in January and again in February. I'll note here again, if you want us to come to you, just give us a call and we will make that happen. Once again, I'm Brenda McChesney. I'm the co-founder and associate director for the National Family Support Network. If you'd like to reach out to me personally, here's my contact information. And as a reminder, we're going to have our survey pop up here in just a second, which includes questions about identifying your next steps and how we can support you best. So once again, thank you so much for coming and joining our Webinar Wednesday Spotlight on West Virginia, and we look forward to seeing you again.